Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Let's continue with methods. In the last part, we have looked at how to define and call the method with no return type, which is void. We have also learned about the differences of local, static, and also instance variables. We went through some examples on how to call the methods and variables. Continuing from the previous part, we will look at how to pass arguments to methods. This means our methods will have parameters within the method header. Then we will learn how to have methods with return types. Previously, we have only looked at void methods. And finally, we will learn about the concept of method overloading. Passing arguments or data to methods. Sometimes, one or more pieces of data need to be sent to a method. For example, passing a value from one method to another when we do not have static variables in the class. An actual parameter is any piece of data that is passed into a method when the method is called. A formal parameter is a variable listed in the method's header that receives the actual parameter that is passed into a method. The actual and formal parameter variable must be of the same data type. Within the method header, we can have multiple parameters to be passed sequentially into a parameter list. The syntax for the method header with formal parameter is we need to write the modifier, which is public static, the return type, such as void, int, double, or other types, the method name, for example here, show message, and within the bracket is the parameter. We need to write the data type, then the variable name, which is any name that follows the identifier rules. An example of it is public static void show message string name, where string name is the formal parameter. In our method, we can have as many formal parameters as we want. If we have more than one parameter, each parameter needs to be separated with a comma. An example of it is public static void show message string name, comma, int num. Here, the parameters are string name and int num. We can have the list of parameters of different types. Formal versus actual parameters. When a method is called, the actual parameters in the method call are copied into the formal parameters in the method header of the method definition. For example, as shown here, the method definition is public static void show message string name, comma, int num. The parameters are string name and int num. To call this method, we can call the name of it, which is show message. However, as the method definition expects two parameters or arguments, when we call the method, we have to provide the string and int. So, to call this method, we can write it as show message Ali, tree, where Ali refers to the string name and tree refers to the int num. The parameter needs to be in the correct data type order. Let's look at this example. We have a class called square. In square class, we have two methods called min and print square method that has one parameter int x. Within the print square method, it will display the value of x times x. In the main method, we call the print square method 3 times. In the first call, we wrote print square value. So what happens here is we call print square method and we pass in the value 2. We use the variable called value that is of type int rather than passing the number straight away. Both of this works just fine. When it gets to the print square method, int x is the value 2, which is the copy of value. So within the method, it will display the value of 2 times 2, which is 4. In the next part, we pass in the value 3 straight away. It invokes the print square method. Int x is the value 3, so within the method, it will display the value of 3 times 3, which is 9. Instead of passing variable or value, we can do some calculation as well, as long as the result of it is type int. Here we have print square value times 2, which is basically print square 2 times 2, which is the same as print square 4. So the value is passed to int x, which is the value 4. It calculates 4 times 4, that gives us 16. So when we run this code, the output that we will get is 4, 9, and 16. Let's look at this other code. What is the error here? We have a class called square2. It has a method called printSquare and it contains a parameter called int x. In the main method, it calls printSquare method. If we look at the method call, we pass in a string and a double to the method. So here we pass in printSquare hello and printSquare 5.5. In the method header of printSquare method, the parameter is of type int. So here we have type mismatch. It needs to be of type int. Let's look at more examples. So here we compare what we have learned in the first part about void method without parameters and methods with parameters. In this example, we have this class called void methods. The first method is public static void method 1. This is the void method without parameters, where public static is the modifier, void is no return type, and the name of the method is method 1. The second method definition is public static void method 2 int a string b boolean c, where public static are the modifiers, the return type is void, and the name of the method is method 2. In this example, method 2 has 3 parameters, which are int a, string b, and boolean c. You can have various types or one type as your parameter. It depends on what you want your program to do. Next, we have public static void main string arguments. What about this? Is this a method? Yes, this is the main method. As we can see, the modifiers are public static, and in this method, it has one parameter of type string, and we call the parameter as arguments. The square bracket means that the parameter is an array. An array can have several values of the same type, which in this case is type string. Array is used when we expect more than one values. It makes more sense to use array rather than having several parameters, such as writing string A, string B, string C, string D, and so on. We will learn about array later in the course. When we run this code, it will go to the main method. In the main method, we have 3 local variables called int b equal to 2, string q equal to we are in method, and boolean r equal to true. It then invokes method 1. In method 1, it will display the sentence within method 1. So this is the first output. It returns back to the main method and calls method 2. Method 2 takes in 3 parameters, int a, string b, and boolean c. So in the method 2 call, we need to provide int, string, and boolean values. Otherwise, it will give us an error when we compile the code. Here we pass in the value p equal to 2, q equal to we are in method, and r equal to true to method 2. Within the method 2, it has a system.out.println, so it will display the value of c, which is boolean true, b, the string we are in method, and a, which is the value 2. So the complete output in this program is within method 1, true, we are in method 2. Try and run this code and check if you get the same output as shown here. Passing arguments or data to methods. In Java, data are passed by value. Passed by value means that only a copy of the actual data value is passed into the method through the formal parameter. It is a one-directional communication where the called method cannot modify the value of the actual data. That's what we have been doing in the previous example of the class called void methods. Looking back at the code, any changes that we do to C, B, and A will not change the value of P, Q, and R. This is because C, B, and A are a copy of the actual data value of P, Q, and R. So far, we have only seen void methods. We can have methods that returns value. On certain occasions, a method must return a value after finishing its task. The returned value is the result that the method has computed and returns it to the caller. If a method returns a value, it can only return exactly one value. For a method that returns a value in the body of the method, it must contain a return statement. A return statement will result in execution flow to jump back to the caller and pass a value to the caller. The syntax of return statement is return and the expression, which can be a variable, constant value, or expression. Keep in mind that it can only return exactly one value. Let's look at this example. For a method that returns a value, in the header we need to write the return type. It can be int, double, char, boolean, and any other type. It is no longer void. Void means no return type. Here we have public static int read age, so the return type is int. At the last line within this method, we have to write return and a value of type int. It can be any value. The type in the method header must match with the type of the return statement. Let's go through this code. In this readAge method, what it does is it goes through the do while loop. It asks the user to enter the age in the range of 1 to 100 using scanner. If the user enters an invalid age, it will loop through it again until the user enters a valid age. From this method, it will return the value of age back to the caller method through the return age statement. How to call or invoke a method that returns a value? When you call the method will produce a value after it is executed because it returns something through the return statement. So we need to do something with the return value, such as assign the value to a variable, pass to another method, or maybe displaying it within the system.out.println. For example, we have seen and used maths.square root before. We know that square root method returns the value of the square root. So we can have a variable to hold the value, such as double result equal to maths.square root 8.5. Or we can also do system.out.println maths.square root 8.5. We can do similar things to any methods that we define ourselves. Let's look at this example. We have a class called ageGroup. It has the main method and readAge method that should return an int value. In the main method, it calls the readAge method and keeps the value returned by the method into a variable called intAge. In the main method, it uses the value returned by the readAge method to check the category of it as children, adolescents, or adult using the if-else statements. We saw that from the previous example that in int return type, it returns one int value. Let's look at the method that returns a string. When we return a string, we can actually return several variables in the form of a string or a sentence. Here we have a class called myMethod. In this class, we have two methods called method1 and the main method. The method definition for method1 is public static string method1 int number1, int number2. So this method has two parameters. From this method header, we know that the return type of this method is string. So we need to have the return statement at the last line within the method. Here we have return sentence. So what does method1 do? This method takes the value that the user passed into it and do the addition. Instead of passing the value sum back to the caller, this method passed the sentence sum of number1 and number2 is sum. So number 1, number 2, and sum can be passed. Otherwise, these values cannot be returned to the caller. In the main method, it calls method 1 and passes the two arguments 5 and 8. So 5 is number 1 and 8 is number 2. The return value from method 1 is kept in the string called call method 1. We then use system.out.println to display the sentence that is returned by method 1. The output when we run this code is, in main method, sum of 5 and 8 is 13. Instead of having a local variable called sentence within method 1, then return the value of the variable, we can have the sentence passed straight away within the return statement as highlighted in blue. These two ways return the same value to the caller. You can choose which way you prefer. Within a class, we can define more than one method with the same name but different parameter signature. We call this as method overloading. Parameter signature is the number and types of the parameters. Two methods are said to have different parameter signature if both methods have a different number of formal parameters, or if the number of formal parameters is the same, the type of the formal parameters must be different. For example, here we have several methods that have the same name called method ABC. These are method overloading. They have different parameter signatures, so we can have all of these methods within the same class. These methods can be referred to based on the parameter signature. For example here, within the same class, we have public static int readAge method and public static int readAge int max method. These are method overloading. They have the same name, which is readAge, but they have different parameter signature. In the first method, it has no parameter. The second method, it has one parameter of type int. Let's look at another example. Say that we have this code with three methods called method ABC. We have public static void method ABC, no parameter. And then we have public static void method ABC int x and public static void method ABC double x. Which method will be called when we write in the main method ABC123? It will call method ABC int x, which is the correct data type for the value 123. 123 is an int. If we have method ABC123.0, it will call method ABC double x. What if we have methods of the same name but different return type? Here we have public static void method ABC int x and public static int method ABC int x. Is this valid? Is this showing an example of method overloading? This is invalid. It will give an error that says method ABC has already been defined. So regardless of the return type, these two methods are exactly the same. Method overloading happens only when the parameters are different. It does not matter whether the return type is void or other return type. What about this? Here we have int x and int y. Are these method overloading? These are invalid. It will give the same error as before, which is method ABC has already been defined. In the beginning, we have already learned that int x and int y are just local variables. It does not matter what we call it. These two methods are exactly the same. To summarize, in this part, we have looked at how to pass arguments to methods by having parameters in the method definition header. We have also looked at having methods with return value such as int and string instead of no return type or void in the previous part of this topic. Also, the concept of method overloading, where the method of the same name must have different parameter signature regardless of the return type.